"Merry Christmas, Father," said the beggar girl to the childless millionaire as she handed him an envelope. When he read what was inside, the millionaire fainted. The cold wind of that December afternoon pierced through the cracks of the window in the community hospital room. Amelia, a 10-year-old girl with honey-colored eyes and curly hair, wore a tattered coat twice her size and was sitting on the edge of the hospital bed, her small, trembling hands holding a blue rosary. Her eyes never left her mother, as if she feared she might disappear at any moment. The fear of loss was so great that it made her little body tremble, while memories of the last happy Christmas flooded her mind. "Mommy, do you remember when you gave me this rosary last Christmas? You said it was so I would never feel alone, that whenever I prayed, you would be with me." Naomi, with a pale and haggard face from illness, tried to adjust herself in bed, her thin fingers reaching for her daughter's hand. The colorful scarf covering her head could not hide the signs of the aggressive treatment her body was enduring. Her eyes, once so lively and bright, now carried a mixture of love and concern as she watched her little girl. The effort to speak was visible, but she needed to respond, needed Amelia to understand how much she was loved. "I remember, my love. And that will never change, Amelia. Even when I'm no longer here, every time you hold this rosary, every time you pray, I'll be by your side, taking care of you, my little warrior." Amelia's heart ached to see her mother, at 28 years old, fighting a cancer that was consuming not only her body, but also her dreams. The machines around the bed kept a steady rhythm, like a countdown that the girl refused to accept. Her small hands clutched the rosary so tightly that the beads left marks on her skin, as if that object could magically cure her mother. Childlike hope still lived in her heart, even in the face of all the sadness that surrounded her. "You're going to get better soon, aren't you? We need to take that trip to the beach that you promised. You said you would teach me to swim, remember?" Naomi took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears that threatened to fall. The noise of the broken fan could not drown out her daughter's stifled sobs. The pain in her chest was not only from the disease, but mainly from knowing that she would not see her little girl grow up, would not be there to protect her from the challenges that would come. Her frail fingers caressed Amelia's curly hair, memorizing every detail of that beloved face. "My little one, you have always been stronger than me. Ever since you were born, fighting to live in the incubator, you showed your determination. That's why I chose your name, Amelia, my warrior. You need to be strong now more than ever." From the hallway, the voice of Vivian, the girl's grandmother, echoed louder and louder, arguing with the nurse about visiting hours. Her bitter, authoritative tone made Amelia shrink in her chair, her small body trying to make itself even smaller. Her grandmother's shouts brought back memories of all the times she had criticized her mother, of all the disapproving looks she received. The fear of the future began to take shape in her childlike heart. "Why is Grandma always so angry, Mom? Why doesn't she like us like other grandmas?" the girl thought. Naomi closed her eyes for a moment, gathering strength to speak. The heart monitor began to emit slower beeps, and her breathing was becoming increasingly difficult. Still, she knew she needed to explain, needed to try to protect her daughter from what was to come. The words came out broken by the lack of air, but charged with urgency. "Amelia, my love, I need you to know something about your father. You need to know that." A violent coughing fit interrupted her words, causing her frail body to writhe in pain. Naomi closed her eyes for a moment, gathering her last strength. The heart monitor began to emit slower beeps, and her breathing was becoming increasingly difficult. Still, she knew she needed to try one last time. "Amelia, my love, I need you to know. Your father, he is Dar," she began to say, but a violent coughing fit interrupted her words, causing her frail body to writhe in pain. Vivian burst into the room at that moment, her high heels echoing like thunder in Amelia's frightened ears. Her expensive, suffocating perfume mingled with the smell of the hospital, while her eyes glared at her granddaughter with contempt. "Enough of this crying. Naomi, how can you insist, even in your final moments, on creating fantasies in this child? Let this girl learn how harsh life really is," said the grandmother, as the monitors began to beep frantically. The medical team rushed into the room, alerted by the increasingly loud medical equipment. Amelia struggled against Vivian's firm grip, which dragged her away from the bed. Her hot tears stained the blue rosary she clutched between her small fingers. "Mommy, don't leave me. Please, Mommy, don't go yet." You haven't finished telling me about my father. Mommy." Naomi, in her last breath of consciousness, fixed her eyes on her daughters, all the love of a lifetime trying to express itself in one final look. The words came out as a whisper, almost lost in the chaos of the machines. "I love you, my victory. You are the most precious thing. Be strong, my warrior," she said. The continuous sound of the monitor filled the room, marking the moment when Amelia became an orphan. Vivian dragged her granddaughter out of the room with unnecessary force, her red nails leaving marks on the girl's thin arms. "Now it's me who will put order in your life, girl. Your mother spoiled you with all that pampering and exaggerated love. In my house, you'll learn discipline. And you can forget that father story. No man wanted anything to do with you two, and now I'm all you have in the world. It's more than time for you to meet reality," she said without a shred of compassion for the girl's pain, who had just lost her mother. Amelia still looked back with every forced step, hoping her mother would get up, that it was all just a nightmare. The blue rosary was her only connection to the love she had just lost, and in her heart a promise began to form. "Mommy, please, come back. I promise I'll be good. I'll do everything right. I don't want to be alone, Mommy. Please don't leave me here. I need you so much," the girl begged. The hospital hallways seemed endless as Amelia was dragged into her new life without time to process her mother's loss. Other families passed by them, some celebrating, others crying, but for Amelia the world had lost all its colors. Between sobs, her lips moved in a silent prayer. "Mommy always said the rosary was so I'd never feel alone. But how can I not feel alone now that she's gone? How will I survive in that woman's house who despised us so much? God, please give me strength to be the warrior my mother believed I was." Weeks later, the clock still didn't show 5 in the morning when Amelia was already on her knees on the kitchen floor, scrubbing each tile with a worn brush. Her little bruised fingers could barely hold the brush handle, and the burst blisters stung with the cleaning product. The blue rosary, hidden under her tattered nightgown, hurt her ribs every time she bent over. But it was her only reminder of her mother. "Why did you leave me, Mommy? Why did you have to go to heaven so soon? Why did you leave me alone with her?" The weeks after the funeral turned into an endless torture. Vivian's mansion, which once seemed like an enchanted palace on the rare visits with her mother, was now her private prison. The room Vivian promised the social worker never existed. Amelia slept on the cold laundry room floor, huddled among buckets and cleaning products that made her eyes burn at night. "Every night I dream of you, Mommy, and wake up crying when I realize I'm here." Breakfast was always the same humiliating ritual. While Vivian savored fresh eggs and steaming coffee, Amelia was forced to eat the trash leftovers standing in the kitchen. That morning, when her stomach growled too loudly, Vivian made a point of purposefully spilling the coffee on the newly waxed floor. "How disgusting, girl. You can't even keep quiet with that filthy belly. Clean this up now and then you'll go upstairs to tidy the attic." Amelia climbed the creaky stairs with trembling legs, carrying buckets too heavy for her thin arms. Each step was torture, but the fear of Vivian was greater than the physical pain. Her back still burned from the blows she had taken the previous day when she accidentally dropped a picture frame. The hours dragged on in the dusty attic as Amelia struggled against hunger and fatigue. Her hands trembled as she cleaned each object, fearful of breaking something and receiving more punishment. The dust entered her lungs, making her cough constantly, but she dared not stop. Vivian came upstairs periodically to supervise, but her true pleasure was in psychologically tormenting her granddaughter. With each visit, a new torment, a new way to break the girl's already fragile spirit. "Look at this mess. You can't even clean properly, you useless thing, just like your incompetent mother. You know why that worthless woman died? Because she was too weak, too stupid to live. She preferred to die than have to look at the freak that you are. And you're going down the same path. You're rotten inside just like her. God was gracious to take your mother away, spared her further shame from a bastard, useless daughter like you." Amelia swallowed her tears as she continued her forced labor, trembling at Vivian's every abrupt movement around the attic and trying not to let her grandmother's words get to her. She couldn't cry. The last time her grandmother caught her crying, she was locked in the laundry room for 2 days without food, with only the noise of rats to keep her company. Suddenly, Vivian grabbed an antique vase from the shelf and forcefully threw it to the floor, making Amelia flinch at the sound of shattering glass. "How clumsy of me! Look at the mess you let fall, you useless thing! Go downstairs and get the broom now, and if I find a single shard of glass when I come back up here, you'll sleep in the yard tonight," she said. Amelia looked at her already bruised hands, her nails black with dirt, her knees bleeding from contact with the rough floor. Her thoughts escaped in a painful whisper. "Why did you leave me with this monster, Mommy? There are days I can barely breathe from being so afraid of her." Vivian went down the stairs distributing threats, and immediately Amelia began to clean up the shards of glass that fell on the floor, cutting herself in the process. After cleaning everything up, she went back to dusting the furniture. It was then that, hidden in the back of a dusty box, Amelia found the photograph. Her mother, young and smiling, with a pregnant belly, hugging an elegant man on a picnic. On the back, just 3 words that changed everything: "Me and Samuel." Her fingers trembled as she touched the paper, as if she could feel the warmth of that moment, frozen in time. "Is it him, Mum? Is he my dad? You tried to tell me his name at the hospital. They sound similar," the girl stated with her heart pounding in her chest. The noise of Vivian's heels on the stairs made Amelia's blood run cold. Before she could hide the photo, her grandmother was already on top of her, her eyes sparking with hatred as she recognized the image. With a brutal movement, she snatched the photograph from her granddaughter's hands, tearing it to pieces. "You little meddler! Who gave you the right to mess with the past? Do you want to end up like your mother?" she shouted. Each piece of the photo that fell was like a stab in Amelia's heart as she tried to recover pieces of the photo. Amid the fragments scattered on the floor, Vivian grabbed her arms tightly, dragging her to the laundry room. The girl's small body hit against the steps of the stairs, but the screams of pain only increased her grandmother's fury. "Today you'll learn not to be a meddler like your mother. No dinner, no water, and tomorrow I'll wake you up at 4. Locked in the cold darkness of the laundry room, Amelia felt her whole body ache. The metallic taste in her mouth mixed with silent tears. Curled up in the darkest corner, she hugged the rosary tightly, her only comfort in that hell. "You said that God had a plan for everyone, Mom, but what plan can be so cruel to a child?" The night wore on, and the cold of the laundry room seemed to freeze her bones. Amelia shivered, not just from the cold, but from fear of what the next day would bring. Her sore fingers ached as she tried to put together the pieces of the photo she had managed to hide in her clothes. "This man, Samuel, my daddy, will he know I exist? Will he help me if he knows I'm here?" she asked herself, as she glued the photo with a piece of tape she found at the bottom of a drawer. A noise upstairs made her shrink even more. It was Vivian walking around the house, probably looking for more reasons to punish her. Amelia hugged her knees to her chest, trying to make herself invisible in the darkness. "I can't take it anymore, Mum. I'd rather die on the street than stay here. Even if I freeze to death, it can't be worse than living with this monster." In the loneliness of the night, a decision born of desperation began to form. It wasn't courage, it was pure survival instinct. Amelia knew that if she stayed there, Vivian would end her life. With the pieces of the photo in her hands next to the rosary, she began to plan her escape. "I don't know what's out there, Mum, but it can't be worse than dying in here." Amelia waited until she heard Vivian's heavy snoring upstairs. Her hands were shaking so much she could barely hold the pieces of the photo, but she knew it was her only chance. If she could escape, maybe she could find Samuel, her dad. If he was smiling in the photo with her mother, maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't be as cruel as Vivian. It was her only hope. "I have to escape from here, Mum, even if it's to die trying." The living room clock struck midnight, each sound echoing like a sentence. Amelia knew she had to wait a few more hours, until she was sure Vivian was in a deep sleep. Lying on the cold floor, she tried to ignore the hunger gnawing at her stomach and the various bruises throbbing all over her body. "I just wish you were here, Mum. I just wanted one of your hugs before facing the world alone." The escape happened on a freezing early morning, when Vivian's snores finally echoed through the hallway. Amelia waited another 10 interminable minutes, counting every second, before trying to force the small rusted window in the laundry room. The metal creaked, making her heart almost stop. She froze in place for a minute, waiting for her grandmother's furious steps, but they didn't come. With trembling fingers from cold and fear, She continued pushing slowly, every noise sounding like thunder in her ears. The biting winter wind pierced her thin nightgown when she finally managed to open enough space to pass through. As she contorted through the narrow gap, a noise from upstairs made her paralyze, half her body inside, half outside. Her scraped knees burned against the rough cement, but she dared not move. Steps, slow, dragging. The creak of Vivian's bed. Amelia held her breath, feeling her heart beat so hard she was sure her grandmother could hear it. The pieces of the glued photo almost slipped from her numb fingers, her only guide to find her father. The sound of a door opening upstairs. More steps. Amelia began to crawl faster, desperate, feeling her skin tear on the rusted metal. A light turned on somewhere in the house. Please, God, don't let her catch me. If she finds me escaping, this time she'll really kill me. Oh, the steps were coming down the stairs now. With one last painful push, Amelia managed to throw herself outside, falling with a dull thud on the frozen grass. She couldn't wait to see if she had been heard. She jumped up and ran into the night, leaving behind drops of blood on the snow that was beginning to fall. The first dawn on the streets was brutal. Amelia shrank under the awning of a closed shop, violently shivering as she watched the first hurried workers passing by. No one looked at the dirty, injured girl. It was as if she were invisible. Her stomach ached with hunger, and her tongue was dry with thirst. How can people simply walk straight by? Don't they see that I'm just a child freezing here? The days dragged on in a routine of survival. Amelia quickly learned that bakeries threw stale bread in the trash before closing, and some diners left food scraps in separate bags. Her little fingers, once hurt by cleaning products, now got injured rummaging through trash cans in search of something to eat. At least in the trash, there's no one yelling at me or hitting me. It's disgusting, but it's better than getting beaten by Grandma. The nights were the worst time. The winter cold penetrated her bones, and even the cardboard she collected wasn't enough to warm her. Amelia watched the lights in the houses turn on, imagining families sitting down for dinner, children taking a warm bath before bed. What would it be like to have a warm place to sleep again? I can't even remember not feeling cold all the time. The city began preparing for Christmas. Workers installed colorful lights on the trees in the square, and the store windows gained festive decorations. Amelia spent hours watching the mechanical snowmen, the smiling Santas, trying to distract herself from the hunger gnawing at her stomach. They make it seem like everyone is happy at Christmas, but what about those who have nothing? And those who have no one, she wondered. During the day, she wandered downtown, always alert. Her clothes, increasingly dirty and torn, made people cross the street when they saw her approach. Store guards brutally expelled her when she tried to take shelter from the cold. Why is everyone so afraid of a child? I just wanted a little corner to warm up. The smell of hot food coming from restaurants was a constant torment. Amelia would stand at the doors of establishments, her stomach growling so loudly that sometimes it drew the attention of customers. Some turned their faces away, embarrassed. Others grumbled about street kids who should be in school. If they knew, I'd give anything to be in a classroom now, even with the kids mocking my clothes. The awnings became her only protection against the snow that was beginning to fall. Amelia developed a mental map of the best places to spend the night, those where the wind blew less, where the guards were less violent, where there was a chance of finding dry cardboard. Every night is a battle against the cold. Sometimes I wake up and can't feel my toes anymore. The reflection in the windows showed a person she barely recognized. Her once curly hair was matted and hardened with dirt. Her formerly chubby cheeks were now hollowed by constant hunger. The injuries from her grandmother's house hadn't completely healed when new ones were already appearing from life on the streets. Will I ever look in the mirror and recognize myself again? Or will I forever be this beggar that everyone avoids? The families doing their Christmas shopping were the hardest to watch. Children clinging to their parents' hands, begging for toys, while the adults argued about feasts and presents. Amelia hid in the shadows, too ashamed to beg but too hungry not to dream of the sweets in the windows. One day I'll find my daddy. He'll buy me presents and give me all the candy in the world. The girl dreamed, feeling that dreaming was her only quiet escape. The cold intensified with each passing day, and Amelia began to fear not surviving the winter. Her lips were always purple, and a dry cough was starting to settle in her chest. At night, While trying to sleep curled up under layers of cardboard, she heard Christmas songs playing in the stores. While the Christmas songs play, I imagine being inside a warm house singing along with my daddy. Will I ever have that too? The search for her father seemed more and more impossible. The city was too big, and she was too small. Her strength diminished with each day without proper food, and the cold consumed any energy that was left. The pieces of the photo were her only connection to a possibility of salvation. What if he's not even in this city anymore? What if I freeze to death before finding him? The Christmas decorations became more elaborate every day. Large illuminated trees appeared in the squares, and choirs rehearsed festive songs on the steps of churches. Amelia watched everything from afar. Looking at all those shining lights, I can almost imagine that one of them is shining just for me, guiding me to a place where I'll find my father. The days blurred into a routine of hunger and cold. Amelia no longer knew how long she had been on the streets. It could be weeks or months. Her small body had learned to contort in impossible ways to get warm, and her stomach no longer growled as much. It was getting used to being empty. There are times when the hunger hurts so much that I'd rather have Grandma's beatings. At least there I had something to eat. One particularly cold day, Amelia found shelter at the back door of an elegant restaurant. The smell of food coming out of the kitchen windows was unbearable, making her stomach twist in pain. Through the fogged-up windows, she could see entire families dining, laughing, celebrating. I see all these happy families dining, and I wonder what it would be like if my dad were at one of those tables. Does he like Christmas food? Would he leave an empty spot at the table for me if he knew I existed? She asked herself. Then, as she saw a father leaving the restaurant hand in hand with his daughter, Amelia said a prayer. Dear God, I was very sad when Mommy went to live in heaven. Forgive me for getting angry at you. I just miss her. If it's not asking too much, could you bring my daddy as a Christmas present? I promise I'll be a good girl and always make you and him proud. She prayed as she lay down on the cardboard, shivering from the cold. The next day, the smell of hot food escaping through the restaurant's door made Amelia's stomach ache even more. Huddled against the exposed brick wall of the restaurant, she watched people enter, their expensive coats and shiny jewelry contrasting with her own filthy rags. The icy wind cut her skin, but the aroma of fresh bread kept her paralyzed there, hypnotized by the possibility of getting some leftovers. If I stay really quiet, maybe no one will notice me. I just need to wait for them to close. There must be something left over. An elegant couple approached the entrance, the woman adjusting her padded coat. Upon seeing Amelia, the lady clutched her designer purse to her chest and pulled her husband by the arm. Henry, look at this. How do they allow this kind of people at the door of a restaurant of this level? Outrageous. Guard, guard, she shouted, and Amelia tried to shrink even more, but the security guard was already coming her way. His large, rough hands grabbed her by the arm, dragging her away from the entrance. Get out of here, dirty girl. Next time I'll call the police. Amelia had barely managed to get up when she heard cruel laughter. A group of well-dressed children, probably her age, pointed and mocked her ragged clothes. One of them, with ribbons in her perfectly groomed hair, nudged the others. Look, she's wearing a trash bag. Suits her, doesn't it, because that's what she is, trash, the girl said, making the laughter grow louder. Amelia felt tears burn her eyes. Why do they have to be so mean? I used to have ribbons in my hair too once. The golden glow of the restaurant's lights caught her attention again. Amelia dragged herself back near the entrance, this time partially hiding behind a decorative column. Her fingers were shaking from the cold, and her belly ached so much she could barely stand. That's when she noticed an older man watching her through the kitchen door. Unlike the others, his eyes didn't show disgust or anger. There was something more there, something she hadn't seen in a long time. Compassion. The man, who Amelia soon discovered was the restaurant's owner, approached slowly, like someone trying not to scare an injured animal. His white apron was stained with various sauces, and his calloused hands betrayed years of hard work in the kitchen. How long has it been since you last ate, little one? He asked in a soft, almost fatherly voice. Amelia couldn't answer. Her stomach answered for her, growling loudly enough to be heard even over the noise of the restaurant. Come with me, he said, extending his hand. I can give you a plate of hot food, but in return I need help cleaning the kitchen. We have too many dishes to wash today, he said. Amelia hesitated for only a second before following the man. The warmth of the kitchen hit her like a long-forgotten embrace, and the smell of food made her knees go weak. "I wonder if I still remember what real food tastes like," she asked herself as she entered the restaurant. The pile of dishes seemed endless, but Amelia didn't care. Each clean dish brought her closer to a hot meal, something she hadn't had in weeks. Her small hands worked quickly, determined to prove her worth. Through the window overlooking the dining room, she could observe the customers at their elegant tables, savoring dishes she didn't even know how to pronounce. "One day I'll be able to enter a place like this through the front door, just like all these people." The noise of cutlery and conversations filled the room when the restaurant door opened again. Amelia continued her task, but something made her look towards the dining room at that exact moment. Her heart stopped. There, being led to the best table in the restaurant, was him, the same man from the photo. Older, with a few grey streaks at the temples, but unmistakable. Her father. Amelia's hands trembled so much she almost dropped the plate she was holding. "It's him. It's my dad. After searching for so long, he's here," she thought. Her thoughts almost incoherent. The world seemed to slow down as Amelia observed his every movement through the kitchen window. The way he adjusted the napkin on his lap, how he smiled at the waiter, how his eyes scanned the menu with familiarity. Each gesture was a treasure she tried to etch into her memory. "He seems so kind. Will he recognize me? Will he want me?" She wondered. Behind the pots and steam of the kitchen, Amelia continued her mechanical work, but her eyes wouldn't peel away from the elegant figure in the dining room. Her heart was beating so hard that she was sure everyone could hear it. There he was, so close and yet so far away, separated by a window and an entire world of differences. How can I reach him? How can I tell him who I am when I look like a beggar? Amelia cleaned the same plate for the third time, hypnotized by her father's presence. He had just placed his order, his polite gestures thanking the waiter. Suddenly, he looked towards the kitchen. Amelia quickly ducked down, her heart nearly leaping out of her mouth. What if he saw me? What if he recognized me somehow? No. How could he? He doesn't even know I exist. Or maybe my mom sent him pictures of me. The scent of his expensive cologne reached all the way to the kitchen when he walked past the service door. Amelia took a deep breath, trying to hold on to that aroma, so different from the street smell that had now become a part of her. Her hands were shaking so much she could barely hold the plates. I need to find a way to talk to him. I need to show him the photo. But what if he kicks me out like everyone else? What if he's mean to me because I'm dirty and now live on the streets? Minutes later, the restaurant owner returned to the kitchen, bringing a steaming bowl of soup and a piece of bread. "Here, little one. You worked well," he said, giving the girl a smile. Amelia thanked him profusely for the plate of food, and her eyes turned back to her father's table, her heart divided between the devastating hunger and the fear of losing sight of him. What if he leaves before I build up the courage? What if this is my only chance? The aroma of the soup was irresistible, but each spoonful was accompanied by an anxious glance towards the dining room. Amelia ate slowly, trying to make the meal last as long as possible. The same amount of time it would take her father to finish his dinner. Her thoughts raced uncontrollably. He must have money. He must live in a nice, warm house. Does he have room for one more person there? As she cleaned more plates, Amelia felt the weight of the pieces of the photo in her pocket. That old image, now precariously mended, was her only proof, her only connection to the elegant man dining just a few meters away from her. I need to show it to him. I need to try. But first I need to look at least a little more presentable. I can't just show up like this. Minutes later, Samuel's cell phone began ringing insistently during dinner. Amelia watched him rise elegantly, apologizing to his wife and walking towards the restaurant door. Her hands were shaking as she dropped the plates in the sink. This was her chance. With her heart racing, Amelia dried her hands on the makeshift apron and took the pieces of the photo out of her pocket. It's now or never. I need to show it to him before he returns to the table. Amelia had barely taken 2 steps towards the kitchen door when she noticed something that made her heart sink. The woman accompanying Samuel was absent-mindedly caressing a small but visible pregnant belly. The shock paralyzed her for a moment. But she didn't have time to process the shock of this discovery. A piercing scream cut through the air. At the table Samuel had just left, the woman accompanying his father, who she would later discover was named Juliana, began to shake violently, her eyes rolling back into their sockets. The water glass toppled over, spilling shards of crystal onto the floor as her pregnant body thrashed against the chair. The waiters froze, some customers screamed, others just watched in horror. My God, she and the baby are going to get hurt. Why isn't anyone doing anything? She asked herself. Without a second thought, Amelia ran to the table. Years of watching her mother have seizures during chemotherapy had taught her exactly what to do. She pushed the table aside, protecting Juliana from hitting her head, and with a quick motion turned her onto her side. Someone call an ambulance. Quick, she's having a seizure, she shouted, while her small hands firmly held the woman's head, trying to prevent her from getting hurt. That's when a shrill voice rose above the commotion. A middle-aged lady was pointing a trembling finger at Amelia, her face contorted into a mask of accusation. I saw it. I saw that beggar put something in her glass. She was watching the table for hours through the kitchen window. She poisoned the poor thing. Panic spread like wildfire through the dining room, instantly transforming the rescue scene into a lynching. The woman's words seemed to have broken some kind of dam. Suddenly other voices joined the chorus of accusations. It's true, I also saw her lurking around the table, someone shouted. Call the police, she must be a thief, yelled another. Amelia kept holding Juliana, desperate to prevent her from getting hurt during the seizure. No, you don't understand, I just wanted to help. I know how to take care of someone having a seizure. The security guard who had previously kicked her out now violently grabbed her by the arms, ripping her away from Juliana. Amelia struggled. Please, let me explain. That man is my father. I have a picture of him with my mother. Please. The restaurant owner, who just minutes before had been so kind, now looked at her with a mixture of disappointment and anger. How could I have been so naive? Letting a beggar into my kitchen. His words hurt more than the security guard's grip on her arms. Amelia tried to explain between sobs. I didn't do anything. I just wanted to help, just like I did for my mom when she got sick. The tumult was increasing. Someone had called the police. Others were shouting to teach the brat a lesson, while the more sensible ones tried to help Juliana, who was still convulsing. Amelia saw Samuel running back into the restaurant, his face pale with concern for his wife. The security guard dragged her towards the back exit, her feet barely touching the ground. Amelia watched, powerless, as another employee swept the pieces of her only evidence into the trash, along with the shards of the broken glass. Her tears now flowed freely, mingling with the sweat of panic. You don't understand. I tried. I tried to help. I would never hurt anyone, accuse, especially a pregnant woman. The back door was violently pushed open, and Amelia was literally thrown into the snow in the alley. Her ribs burned where the security guard had grabbed her, and her knees were injured from the glass shards she had crawled over to help Juliana. The cold once again punished her poorly protected body. Why does no one ever believe me? Why do they always think I'm guilty? The ambulance siren was already approaching when Amelia tried one last time to enter the restaurant. She needed to go to her father, needed to make him understand. But the security guard was ready, pushing the girl back, causing her to stumble. Get out of here now, or next time I won't be so gentle. Amelia staggered away from the restaurant. Behind her, she could hear the confusion increasing, people shouting, sirens, doors slamming. Her only chance to find her father had turned into a nightmare. Amelia dragged herself to a nearby awning, her body shaking uncontrollably. Through the restaurant's window, she could see the paramedics attending to Juliana, while Samuel held his wife's hand worriedly. For a moment their eyes met through the glass, but it was only for a few seconds before her father turned his gaze back to his wife. The cold wind in the alley seemed even sharper now, or perhaps it was just her shattered heart that made everything seem worse. Amelia watched the commotion in the restaurant for a few more minutes, seeing her last hope being taken away in the ambulance. I've lost everything, the chance to meet my father. Now all that's left for me is the street again. The last customers hurried out of the restaurant, still commenting on the beggar who tried to take the pregnant lady's life. Amelia heard their malicious comments, powerless to defend her innocence. Now, in addition to being hungry and alone, She was a criminal in everyone's eyes. How can life change so fast? One minute I was so close to finding my father, the next I'm a poisoner. As the night wore on, Amelia remained huddled under the awning, unable to move. Every inch of her body ached, from the blows, the cold, the rejection. The restaurant began turning off its lights, returning to normalcy as if nothing had happened. But for Amelia, nothing would ever be normal again. Maybe it's better this way. Maybe it's better if he never knows he has a poor daughter like me. Hours later, in the most luxurious hospital room in the city, but not all the comfort in the world could ease the pain that hung in the air. Samuel held Juliana's hand tightly, their fingers intertwined as if they could somehow prevent another piece of their dreams from slipping away. The heart monitor marked a steady rhythm, almost ironic in its stability, as they waited for the doctor to return with the test results. "Please, my love, stay calm. Everything will be all right this time, you'll see." The doctor entered the room with heavy steps, carrying a folder that seemed to weigh tons. His tired eyes and the way he adjusted his tie said everything his lips hesitated to pronounce. Juliana squeezed Samuel's hand harder, her nails leaving marks on his skin. "Doctor, please, tell me my baby and my wife are fine, please." The silence that followed the doctor's words was deafening, as if all the air had been sucked out of the room. The doctor, with his 30 years of experience, never got used to these moments. His grave voice tried to sound professional, but compassion escaped between the words. "I'm sorry, but the eclampsia was too severe. The pressure rose uncontrollably, causing irreversible damage. We couldn't save the fetus," he said, and Samuel felt the world spin, his legs weakening under the weight of that familiar, devastating sentence. He had to lean on the bed to keep from falling, his fingers gripping the cold metal of the railing as if he could anchor himself to reality. It was the third time they heard those words, first with Miguel, then with Sophia, and now with Gabrielle. The third time their dreams were shattered, that a name chosen with so much love became just another scar on their hearts. Juliana let out a scream that seemed to come from the depths of her soul, a primitive sound of pain that made the nurses in the hallway pause in their tasks. "No, no, not my baby, not again," she pleaded, her hands instinctively flying to the now silent belly, that empty space that just hours ago harbored all her hopes. The nursery at home, painted aquamarine after so many discussions, the tiny clothes already organized in the drawers, the toys waiting for little hands that would never touch them, all of that flashed through their minds like torturous flickers. Samuel tried to reach his wife, but his body didn't respond. He was trapped in that terrible moment, reliving every loss, the sleepless nights at the hospital, the endless days of mourning Sophia, and now Gabriel, who didn't even have a chance to fight. The doctor's words kept echoing in his mind like a funeral bell. We couldn't save, we couldn't save, we couldn't save, Juliana repeated, writhing in bed, her sobs shaking her entire body as she murmured the name she would never call. Gabriel, my little Gabriel. Mummy loves you so much. Come back to me. Please, come back to me. She pleaded, crying. The heart monitor recorded her accelerated heartbeats, her body reacting to the trauma of yet another loss, another shattered dream. Samuel finally managed to move, enveloping his wife in his arms, feeling her tears soaking his shirt as his own tears fell silently. It was the third time, and each time hurt more. Each time ripped a bigger piece from their souls. Why, God? Why do you make us dream only to take it all away again? What did we do to deserve so much pain? He thought. The doctor cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses as if preparing to deliver another blow. His years of experience didn't make moments like this any easier. There's something else we need to discuss. Sir, as we know, this last fertilization was done with your last viable sample, due to your condition. The doctor began to explain, but Samuel squeezed his eyes shut, the doctor's words cutting like razors. Please, doctor. Not in front of her. Not now. But Juliana was already sitting up in bed, her red eyes fixed on the doctor, demanding the whole truth. Doctor, Martinez continued, his professional tone barely disguising his compassion. Your sterility is irreversible, and the previous treatments have exhausted all the samples we were able to preserve. Scientifically speaking, there is no more possibility of further attempts, the doctor determined. Samuel walked to the room's window, unable to face his wife at that moment. He wanted to go to her, console her, But he didn't know what words to say or what could diminish the pain of the woman he loved so dearly. Down below in the hospital courtyard, entire families were coming and going. Parents carrying pink and blue balloons, children running around, life pulsing in every corner. His voice came out choked. We spent a fortune on these treatments, all for a chance to become parents. Juliana was now curled up on the bed, clutching a tiny pair of baby shoes she had bought the previous week. The little white crocheted booties seemed minuscule in her trembling hands. She had chosen them personally, imagining the tiny feet that would never wear them. It was our last baby, our last chance, and I lost it. The doctor tried to explain other options: adoption, surrogacy, new experimental treatments. But his words seemed distant, unreal, as if he were speaking another language. Samuel returned to his wife's side, enveloping her in his arms as she sobbed. "It wasn't your fault, my love. The fault is mine. My body that doesn't work as it should." The baby shoes fell to the floor as Juliana clung to her husband's shirt, her body shaken by violent sobs. Her tears stained the expensive fabric, creating dark blotches that seemed to spread like her pain. 3 babies, Samuel. 3 little angels we never met. How can we keep living with so much love stored and no one to receive it? The room plunged into a heavy silence, broken only by the steady beeping of the monitors and Juliana's muffled sobs. Samuel stroked his wife's hair mechanically, his own thoughts lost in a whirlwind of guilt and despair. "I promised to make you happy when we got married. I promised to give you a family, and I failed. I failed all my promises." The afternoon sun streamed through the window, casting elongated shadows in the room. Samuel watched the golden rays play with the fallen booties on the floor, creating an almost ethereal glow around them. Each thread of light seemed to mock their shattered dreams. How can something so small represent such a great loss? The doctor left some prescriptions on the bedside table: antidepressants, sedatives, vitamins. The list of medications was like an inventory of their failures, each pill representing a new defeat. Juliana didn't even look at the papers, her eyes fixed on the void. Not even the strongest medicines can cure this kind of pain. Samuel moved away again to the window, leaving Juliana in the care of the nurse who had just entered. His reflection on the glass showed a man aged 10 years in just a few hours, the deep dark circles marking a face devastated by guilt. Down below, a father was teaching his little son to take his first steps. That moment will never be ours. The sky began to darken as Juliana finally fell asleep, exhausted from so much crying. Samuel picked up the booties from the floor, keeping them on the nightstand as if they were sacred relics. Next to them, the last ultrasound showed the silhouette of the baby they would never meet. How will we go back home and face that empty room again? Night fell over the city as Samuel allowed himself to cry, silently, still holding his sleeping wife's hand. The hospital lights began to turn on one by one, like artificial stars in the sky of their lost dreams. They say God doesn't give us a cross greater than we can bear, but how many more crosses will we have to endure? Days later, the cold of that Christmas night was different, sharper than usual. Amelia watched through the shop window as the employees finished adjusting the last decorations, a mechanical Santa Claus waving endlessly, golden reindeer blinking, artificial snowflakes falling in a glass globe. Her reflection in the glass showed an unrecognizable creature. Tangled hair, gaunt face hollowed by hunger, deep dark circles marking a face that had aged years in just a few weeks. The snow began to fall harder, and Amelia had to abandon her usual marquee. The wind was blowing the flakes directly onto her. Dragging herself through the residential neighborhood, she could see families gathered through the windows, the smell of food escaping through cracks and chimneys, torturing her empty stomach. The colored lights of the houses cast dancing shadows on the snow, as if mocking her misery. It must be nice to have a warm home. It must be nice to have someone waiting for you. I wish I could have my daddy on this Christmas night, but I lost my chance. The sky darkened quickly, and she knew that soon the families would be gathering for the feast. Her stomach ached with hunger, but there was a small spark of hope in her hurt heart. She had heard a lady at the church door saying that Christmas is a time for charity, for opening your heart. Perhaps just maybe on this special night, someone would take pity on her. People say that at Christmas hearts become more tender, that it's a time to think of others. Will someone share a piece of bread with me? Will people be more charitable on this night as Jesus would be? She wondered, hoping the answer would be true. Her toes were already numb inside her soaked sneakers when she reached the first house, determined to prove that there was still kindness in the world. It was a 2-story construction, all decorated with blue twinkling lights. Gathering all her courage, Amelia climbed the porch steps and knocked on the door. An elderly lady appeared, her initially smiling face transforming into a mask of disdain. "Get out of here. A beggar on Christmas night can only be here to steal." "Honey, call the police." Amelia ran down the steps, stumbling in her haste to escape. The second attempt was at a smaller, more modest house, but equally lit up for the holidays. Amelia didn't even get to knock on the door. The owner saw her through the gate and immediately released 2 huge German shepherds. The dogs advanced, barking furiously, their teeth glistening under the Christmas lights. Amelia ran as she had never run before, her lungs burning with the freezing air until she hid behind a dumpster. Why do they have to be so cruel? I just wanted a little food. The third place she tried was a 2-story house with a large lighted star on the roof. Christmas music escaped through the windows, along with laughter and cheerful voices. Amelia could see the family gathered around the table through the thin curtain. Grandparents, parents, children, all sharing the feast, passing around steaming bowls from one side to the other. Her legs trembled as she rang the doorbell. The sound of laughter continued, but no one came to answer. She rang again and again. "I know you can hear me. Please, just a piece of bread." The snow was now falling in thick flakes, forming a thick layer on the ground. Amelia staggered to the next house, her fingers so frozen she could barely form a fist to knock on the door. A little girl opened, her eyes widening at the sight of the emaciated figure before her. She was quickly pulled inside by a horrified mother. "Don't open the door to strangers, especially these homeless people. They might be on drugs." The door slammed shut, and Amelia could hear the lock being turned several times. The biting wind carried the sounds of celebrations, clinking glasses, Christmas tunes, distant laughter. Amelia dragged herself to a huge Christmas tree in the town square, its multicolored lights reflecting on the snow like fallen stars. Her lips were purple, and she could no longer feel her feet. Would anyone miss me if I fell asleep here and never woke up? A family passed by her carrying gifts and last-minute shopping bags. The mother pulled her daughter closer when she saw Amelia, as if poverty was contagious. The father pretended to be very busy with his cell phone. The girl, however, looked back several times until her mother scolded, "Don't look at her. Those people choose to live like that," said the woman. Amelia lowered her head, tears freezing on her cheeks before they even fell. The church clock began to chime, officially announcing Christmas night. Amelia watched as people entered for Mass, all well bundled up, some carrying baskets of food for donation. Ironically, none of those baskets would reach her. They would be distributed only to registered families after the holidays. Even charity has to be registered. Even to receive help you need an address, she thought, her legs giving way near a particularly large house with an illuminated nativity scene in the yard. The irony did not escape her. Mary and Joseph had also sought shelter on a cold night, also rejected from door to door. But at least they had each other. Amelia was completely alone. Will the baby Jesus watch over me tonight? Will he also help those who are so hungry? Will God remember that I asked for my daddy for Christmas? She wondered. The smell of roasted turkey came from an open window, making her stomach ache even more. Amelia could hear the family inside praying before the feast, giving thanks for the blessings received. A child complained that the food was taking too long. They give thanks for the food they have, but turn a blind eye to those who have nothing. A new attempt at a house with large red bows at the entrance. Amelia could barely stand, her knees violently shaking. When the door opened, she couldn't even ask for food. Her stomach growled so loudly that the lady of the house stepped back, disgusted. "Go find something to do. Christmas is a family celebration, not a begging day." The door slammed shut, echoing down the silent street. The lights in the houses began to turn off one by one, families retreating after the hearty meals. Amelia dragged herself to a marquee, huddling as much as possible to try to conserve some warmth. Her body was shaking so much that her teeth chattered, making a noise that seemed to echo in the empty night. They say Christmas is a season of miracles, but I don't think miracles happen to people like me. I just wanted to have a family, someone who wanted to be with me tonight. The silence of the night was only broken by the distant sound of fireworks and the howling wind. Amelia watched the colored lights reflecting on the snow, creating hypnotic patterns that made her remember other Christmases, other lives. Her stomach had stopped growling. Now it was just a dull, constant ache. Maybe it's better this way. Maybe it's better not to feel anything anymore. Amelia closed her eyes, trying to imagine the warmth of a hug, the comfort of a home, the taste of a hot meal. But the images wouldn't come anymore. They were swallowed by the cold, the hunger, the absolute loneliness of that night that should have been of joy and celebration. How can there be so much light out there when everything inside me is so dark? Amelia was almost succumbing to the frozen sleep when an intense glow cut through the night sky. It wasn't like the other blinking Christmas lights on the houses. It was a living, pure light that seemed to pulse like a celestial heart. A shooting star tore through the sky, leaving a silver trail among the snow-laden clouds. The whole world seemed to stop in that moment. The cold, the hunger, the pain, everything was suspended as she watched that divine light. It's like the star that guided the wise men. Could it also be showing me a path? She wondered in awe. The cathedral bells began to ring, their tolls echoing through the snow-covered city. Amelia stood up with difficulty, her numb limbs protesting with every movement. But there was something different now, a strength that didn't come from her starving body, but from somewhere deeper. If the baby Jesus was born on a cold night like this, he must understand my pain. He must be sending me a sign. The path was difficult. Her feet sank into the soft snow, leaving a trail of small footprints that were soon erased by the falling flakes. The lights of the houses illuminated her journey. Here, a Christmas tree shining through a window. There, an illuminated nativity scene in a garden. It was as if each light was a small star, continuing the path that the shooting star had begun. Mom always said that when God closes a door, he opens a window. Maybe this is my window. I have to keep faith. I have to keep hope, the girl thought. As she advanced through the wealthy neighborhood with a sense of certainty in her chest, the houses grew larger, and the decorations more elaborate. Luminous angels played silent trumpets, mechanical reindeer nodded their heads, and enormous trees shone like beacons in the night. From one house came the sound of a Christmas carol, the music crossing the snow like a prayer. Amelia began to hum softly, her trembling voice mingling with the wind. Her steps led her down streets she had never seen before, but something in her heart told her she was on the right path. The envelope with the photo weighed in her pocket like an anchor of hope. The snow was now falling more gently, as if the very heavens were holding their breath. It's as if someone is guiding me, as if Mom is showing me the way from heaven. That's when she saw it, a mansion that looked straight out of a Christmas fairy tale. The wrought iron gates were decorated with garlands and red bows. In the garden, dozens of small trees covered in lights formed a path to the main door. A giant Christmas tree could be seen through the tall windows, its golden lights pouring onto the snow like honey. With hesitant steps, Amelia crossed the garden. Each step made her heart beat faster. The lights from the decorations reflected off the falling snowflakes, creating tiny rainbows around her. In the frozen fountain of the garden, a marble angel seemed to smile at her, its snow-covered wings gleaming under the lights. Do real angels exist? Is one guiding me now? As she reached the door, her legs were shaking so much she could barely stand. The wreath on the door exuded a pine scent that reminded her of other Christmases, of happier times with her mother. Her small frozen hand hesitated before ringing the bell. Please, God, if the star brought me here, it's because there's a reason. Don't leave me alone now, she pleaded, but deep inside she felt her heart at peace, a strong intuition guiding her there. The sound of the doorbell echoed like a church bell. Amelia could hear Christmas songs playing inside the house, muffled voices, the tinkling of glasses. Her heart was beating so hard, it seemed like it wanted to jump out of her chest. As she waited, she looked up at the sky. The star that had guided her was gone, but the whole sky now seemed to shine with a different light. This is the day everything changes. I can feel it. The door opened, spilling light, warmth, and the scent of cinnamon and pine over her. And there was Samuel, standing under the portal like a figure out of a dream. For a moment, it was as if time stopped. Amelia was shocked to see him there, as if he was a Christmas present. Father and daughter looking at each other for the first time, really looking, under the Christmas lights. The red sweater he wore, the snowflakes dancing around, the golden lights of the tree in the background, everything seemed part of a carefully orchestrated miracle. It's him. It's my dad. After so much searching, the star brought me to him, the girl thought. The recognition in Samuel's eyes was immediate. The girl from the restaurant, the one who had helped Juliana. But there was something different now. Under the Christmas lights, she looked even more fragile, younger. The snowflakes accumulated on her unkempt hair like a sad crown, and her lips were so purple they looked almost black. My God, you. How did you get here? What happened? Are you cold, little one? Do you want a plate of food? He asked, genuinely concerned about the girl. Amelia tried to speak, but her teeth were chattering so much that the words came out choppily. With trembling fingers, she took the crumpled envelope out of her pocket. The paper was damp from the snow, but the photo inside remained protected, keeping that precious moment from the past. Merry Christmas, Daddy. The words came out as a whispered prayer, carrying all the weight of her journey. Samuel took the envelope with hands that trembled almost as much as hers. The paper seemed to burn his fingers as he opened it. In the photo, he saw his own younger face, smiling alongside Naomi. The picnic, the sunny day, it all came back in a wave of memories. The Christmas music playing inside the house now seemed distant, as if from another dimension. Naomi, my sweet and dear Naomi. In the photo, they were sitting on a red and white checkered blanket, the same colors that now decorated his house for Christmas. Naomi smiled that smile that lit up her honey-colored eyes, the same eyes that now stared at him through Amelia's frozen face. Fate had strange ways of connecting the dots, of completing circles that seemed eternally open. How did I not realize before? How did I not see your eyes, so similar to hers? You're her daughter, aren't you? He asked. Amelia staggered, the effort of the journey finally taking its toll. Samuel held her before she fell, feeling through the thin fabric of her clothes how cold she was. It was like hugging an ice angel, fragile, brittle, but somehow still alive, still fighting. The lights of the Christmas tree reflected on her frozen tears, turning them into tiny diamonds. You're safe now. You're home. The warmth of the house hit her like a wave of mercy when Samuel led her inside. The scent of cinnamon and pine, the soft music, the golden lights, everything seemed unreal after so long in the cold. Her knees gave way, and Samuel picked her up as if she weighed nothing, carrying her to the armchair closest to the lit fireplace. It's like the dreams I had. It's even better than the dreams, Daddy. I asked God to bring you to me, Daddy, on Christmas night. You're my gift, said the emotional girl, and Samuel was shocked, processing several times what the girl was saying, feeling dizzy upon hearing those words. It took him a few seconds to recover, and he knelt before her, rubbing her cold hands between his, trying to bring life back to those small, hurt fingers. His heart broke with every new mark he discovered. The cuts, the bruises, the frostbite. But something bigger was happening there, something greater than themselves. On the night the world celebrated the birth of a child in a manger, another lost child found her way home. You're a miracle. My Christmas miracle too, little one. The house was decorated to receive the happiness that never came. The imposing tree, the presents underneath, the stockings hung by the fireplace, gifts that would be returned the next day, as happened every year since the last loss. But now, looking at Amelia struggling to keep her eyes open, Samuel understood that the true gift did not come in shiny wrappings. Years trying to have a child, and God sends you to me through the front door on Christmas night. Amelia felt the warmth slowly returning to her body, bringing with it a sharp pain in every nerve ending. But it was a good pain, a pain of life returning. Her tears now flowed freely, melting along with the snow in her hair. The Christmas music continued to play softly in the background, the song her mother used to sing to her to sleep on Christmas night. It's real. It's not a dream. I found my dad. Samuel got up only to get a soft blanket from the couch, wrapping Amelia as if she were made of crystal. Every move of his was gentle, almost reverent, as if he feared she might disappear like a snowflake in the sun. The photo was still in his hand, a silent testimony to a past that now made sense. "I looked for you, you know, all these years. I looked for you and your mother in every corner," he said. Amelia fought against the sleep that was beginning to overtake her, warmed for the first time in weeks. Her last strength was used to ask the question that burned in her heart. You really looked for me? You wanted to find me?" she asked, her voice just a whisper, laden with all the hope that was left in her soul. Samuel swallowed the lump in his throat and hesitated. The lie came naturally, not as a deception, but as a Christmas gift for the girl who seemed so hopeful. He didn't want to break her heart. She was the gift of hope, acceptance, unconditional love. "Of course, my little one, all these years, I searched for you in every face, on every corner, and now you're here. Now you're home," he said. The words came out with a conviction that surprised even himself, because in that moment, under the lights of the Christmas tree, he knew they were true in his heart. A loud rumble from Amelia's stomach broke the moment. Samuel then noticed how thin she was, her hollow cheeks, the sunken eyes of someone who hasn't eaten properly for days. "You must be starving. Come, the cook always leaves something prepared in the fridge." He helped her to her feet, her legs still wobbly from the cold and exhaustion. Amelia smelled the food coming from the kitchen, and her eyes filled with tears. She couldn't remember the last time she had eaten something hot. In the immaculate kitchen, Samuel opened the fridge and began taking out container after container. Soon the table was full: roast turkey, golden potatoes, pies, puddings, a true Christmas feast. He heated a generous plate in the microwave, while Amelia watched, hypnotized, feeling the aroma of the food make her stomach ache even more. "Eat slowly, okay? There's plenty more if you want seconds." When the first forkful of hot food touched her tongue, Amelia couldn't contain the sob of relief. It was more than food. It was the first meal of her new life. After eating, Amelia could barely keep her eyes open. The warmth of the house, her belly full for the first time in weeks, and the relief of finally being safe made her small body heavy with sleep. Samuel gently guided her back to the armchair by the fireplace, where she settled like an exhausted kitten. Sleep overcame her almost instantly, her body relaxing like a rag doll. Samuel remained there, kneeling beside her, watching her now regular breathing, the color slowly returning to her face. It was then that he heard the soft sound of heels coming down the stairs. Juliana was coming down to look for her husband. "Samuel, who is this child?" Juliana's voice died in her throat as she got closer. Her eyes widened as she recognized the girl from the restaurant, the one who had tried to help her during the seizure. Samuel stood up and went to his wife. "It's her, Juliana. The girl who tried to save you that night. She came to our door nearly frozen." Juliana approached the armchair slowly, her teary eyes fixed on the small sleeping figure. "My God, Samuel. She tried to help me and everyone treated her so badly I couldn't speak. I wanted so much to thank her for her kindness. And now she's here, alone, on Christmas night." She gently stroked the girl's face with a heartbreaking tenderness. Samuel then silently handed her the photo, and Juliana's face transformed as she understood the whole story. "It's a miracle, Samuel, a true Christmas miracle." "She's our daughter, Juliana," Samuel whispered, embracing his now silently weeping wife. "Fate brought her to our door on Christmas night." Juliana approached the armchair, kneeling beside Amelia. With trembling fingers, she brushed a lock of hair from the sleeping girl's face. She looked so much like her mother. Those same honey-colored eyes. Outside, the snow continued to fall softly, covering all the footsteps that led to their door, as if the very heavens wanted to preserve the mystery of that encounter. Samuel embraced Juliana from behind, both watching the child that fate had brought. Through the window, the first lights of Christmas morning began to gild the horizon. A new day was dawning, bringing with it the promise of new beginnings, of dreams fulfilled, of families reunited not by blood, but by love. In the armchair, Amelia smiled in her sleep, finally at peace, finally home. Juliana held her tiny hand in hers, tears of joy running down her face. The Christmas miracle had come to pass, not with singing angels or wise men bearing gifts, but with a star guiding a lost child to her destiny. "Welcome home, our daughter," Samuel and Juliana whispered together. "Welcome to your first Christmas with family." Days later, Dinner that night had a special celebratory air. Juliana had prepared lasagna, and the smell of melted cheese and tomato sauce filled the entire kitchen. Amelia, wearing a new pink dress that Juliana had insisted on buying, watched in wonder at the way they interacted, the conspiratorial smiles, the small acts of kindness, the way Samuel pulled out Juliana's chair for her to sit. It was like being inside one of those television commercials she used to watch through store windows. Samuel told funny stories from his work as he cut the lasagna into generous slices. Amelia had never seen so much food on one plate. In her recent memory, there were only cold leftovers at her grandmother's house and restaurant trash. Her eyes shone every time Samuel called her daughter, every time Juliana stroked her hair affectionately. "Dad, pass me the juice?" she asked shyly, savoring the way the words sounded on her tongue. Samuel's smile lit up his entire face. The dessert was creme caramel, served in delicate crystal glasses that gently clinked. Amelia watched in fascination as the caramel swirled in patterns when it dripped off the spoon. Juliana talked about her plans to redecorate the room that would be Amelia's, asking her favorite colors, what kind of curtains she preferred. For the first time in a long while, Amelia allowed herself to dream of a future. "I think I like blue. Like the sky when it's clear." It was after dessert, when the plates had already been cleared and they chatted casually at the table, that Amelia felt that immense need to give thanks. Not just for dinner, not just for the new dress or the promise of the decorated room, but for everything, for the chance to have a family again after losing her beloved mother. Do you have a book of prayers?" "I'd like to thank God for what he's done for me." Juliana smiled tenderly, exchanging a knowing look with Samuel. "Of course, my love. The library has an old Bible that I use for my prayers. It's the first door to the right, down the hallway," she said, and Amelia rose from the table, still getting used to the soft new pajamas Juliana had bought especially for her. "Thank you for everything. I'll never be able to thank you enough for taking me in." The library was even more impressive than Amelia had imagined. Mahogany bookshelves rose to the high ceiling, all filled with books of different sizes and colors. A Persian rug covered the floor, muffling her steps, and a fireplace crackled softly in one corner, making the shadows dance on the walls. Two inviting leather sofas flanked an antique side table, where the Bible Juliana had mentioned rested. "It looks like the library from the fairy tales." With reverence, Amelia picked up the sacred book. It was heavy, bound in brown leather with golden details on the edges. When she opened it, the scent of old paper enveloped her like an embrace. It was then that the envelope fell, silently sliding between the yellowed pages. Amelia picked it up, curious, and her heart stopped when she recognized the delicate handwriting. "This handwriting? It can't be. It's my mother's handwriting," she thought. The first lines of the letter made her knees go weak. Amelia had to lean on the side table to keep from falling, her world starting to spin as she read, "Dear Samuel, I know you must be worried about me disappearing like this. But I couldn't bear the weight of this secret any longer." Her hands shook so hard the words danced before her eyes. "No, please, no." Each word she read was like a dagger in her heart. "Amelia's father, Daniel Martinez, abandoned me when he found out I was pregnant. He said he didn't want a daughter, that I should take care of the problem." The air seemed to have been sucked out of the library. Amelia felt her chest tightening, as if she was being crushed under an invisible weight. Tears blurred her vision, but she forced herself to keep reading, even as each word destroyed her a little more. The final revelation came like a merciful blow. "You were the only friend who supported me at that time, but I need to start over far away from here." The paper trembled in her hands as the truth crystallized in her mind. Samuel was not her father. He never was. He was just a friend of her mother's, a kind man who now, out of pity, pretended to be something he was not. All lies, every word, every smile. From downstairs came the voices of Samuel and Juliana, still chatting cheerfully. Amelia could hear her laughter, his deep tone responding, the clinking of dishes being put away, sounds of a normal life, a life that would never truly be hers. The warmth of the fireplace now seemed suffocating, the bookshelves looming over her like a gilded cage. They must be laughing at me. The poor little girl who believed the story of the loving father, she thought, feeling the tears well up in her eyes. Amelia folded the letter carefully, almost mechanically, and tucked it into the pocket of her new dress, which now seemed to weigh a ton. Her reflection in the glass of the bookshelf showed a different girl from the one who had entered there minutes before. The eyes that had once shone with happiness were now dull, lifeless. How could I have been so stupid? How could I have believed someone would want me? With the practiced ease of someone who had spent a lifetime hiding, Amelia moved silently through the house. She knew the way to the back door well. She had memorized all the escape routes the moment she entered, a habit the streets had taught her. She didn't care that she was wearing only the thin dress, didn't care about the cold she could see through the windows. I'd rather freeze out there with the truth than live in here with lies. The icy wind greeted her like a slap when she opened the door. The snow was falling in thick flurries now, as if the very sky wept with her. Amelia didn't hesitate. She plunged into the night like someone diving into a nightmare, her bare feet sinking into the powdery snow. The pain of the cold was welcome, almost a relief compared to the agony lacerating her chest. At least the snow is honest in its cruelty. At least the cold never pretended to love me. Her feet soon went numb as she ran through the night, leaving footprints that the snow quickly erased behind her. The pink dress, once a symbol of hope, was now soaked and heavy, clinging to her shivering body. Amelia could hear her own sobs mingling with the howl of the wind, but she didn't stop. She couldn't stop. No one ever wanted me. Not my real father. Not Samuel. Only my mother, and she's gone. The empty streets seemed even crueler in their solitude. Through the windows of the houses, Amelia could see families gathered. Real families, not that sham she had lived a few days ago. Her whole body ached now, protesting against the ruthless cold. But she kept running. To where? It didn't matter. Anywhere would be better than living off crumbs of love, than accepting charity disguised as affection. I thought I had found a Christmas miracle, but it was just another lie. The biting wind carried snowflakes that felt like needles on her exposed skin. Amelia could no longer feel her feet, and her lips must have been purple with cold, but she didn't care. Each step took her away from that house of lies, from that man who pretended to be her father, from that life that for a brief moment seemed possible. The tears froze on her cheeks before they even fell, creating icy trails on her childlike face. "Mum, why didn't you tell me that life is so cruel? Why did you let me believe that I could be loved and that the world was beautiful and kind?" she asked herself. Samuel realized something was wrong when the silence in the library stretched for too long. He ran upstairs calling for Amelia, but found only the open Bible on the little table, some crumpled pages revealing that something had been hastily removed. His heart froze when he realized what had happened. The letter. My God, Naomi's letter was here. How could I have forgotten? Samuel's world crumbled when he found the open Bible in the library, its crumpled pages revealing what Amelia had discovered. Naomi's letter, kept there for so many years. Through the window he saw the small barefoot footprints in the snow. She had fled wearing only the thin dinner dress. My God, she's out there in this cold. No shoes, no coat. His hands were shaking as he ran down the stairs, almost tripping over his own feet. Juliana, she found out everything and ran away. Naomi's letter. It was in the Bible. Juliana's face turned pale as she grasped the gravity of the situation. Just hours earlier, they had all been sitting at the table, laughing, planning the future. Now Amelia was alone in the worst storm of the year, carrying the weight of a betrayal they never intended to cause. Samuel grabbed the car keys and his heaviest coat, barely hearing Juliana's sobs behind him. His hands were shaking so much he could barely dial the security number. "Gather all teams." A 10-year-old girl named Amelia ran away from home. She's barefoot in the snow. Search every corner of this city if we don't find her soon. His voice failed, unable to complete the terrible thought. The car engine rumbled in the garage as he adjusted the rearview mirror with numb fingers. The last image he saw was Juliana at the door, tears freezing on her face before plunging into the storm. The snow was falling in thick flakes now, as if the very sky was trying to erase Amelia's tracks. Samuel gripped the steering wheel tightly, feeling the weight of guilt crushing his chest. What kind of monster lies to a child who has already suffered so much? What kind of father did I think I could be? I didn't want to hurt that heart, and now I've done it. I've ruined everything. The downtown streets, normally so familiar, now seemed like a hostile labyrinth under the storm. Samuel drove slowly, the headlights barely able to penetrate the white curtain of snow. The car dashboard read 3 degrees below zero, and the temperature kept dropping. In his mind, the image of Amelia at dinner just a few hours earlier kept replaying. Her shy smile when he called her daughter, her eyes shining as she tasted the dessert, the way she arranged the napkin on her lap like a little lady. How could I have been so stupid? How could I think that a lie wouldn't have consequences? The first stop was the restaurant where it all began. The place was closed and dark, but Samuel got out anyway, shouting her name against the cutting wind. His footprints in the fresh snow were quickly erased as if they had never existed. A security guard appeared with a flashlight. "Nothing in the back, sir. We checked all the dumpsters and nearby alleys. No sign of her." The car radio kept crackling with the voices of the search teams. "Train station area clear. Nothing in the Central Park. Shopping mall perimeter checked. No sign of the girl." Each negative response was like a stab in Samuel's chest. The clock on the dashboard seemed to mock him. An hour had already passed. A whole hour with Amelia barefoot in that deadly cold. The next stop was the church where she said she used to take shelter. Samuel jumped out of the car, ignoring the icy wind that cut his face. He checked every pew, every dark corner, shouting for her until his voice was hoarse. The priest, woken up by the noise, just shook his head. "No one came in here tonight, son. But I will pray that you find her." The awnings of the downtown stores, once cheerful with their Christmas decorations, now looked gloomy and menacing. Samuel stopped at each one, his heart leaping at every shadow the wind formed with plastic bags and old newspapers. The snow was starting to accumulate on the sidewalks, making the search even more difficult. "Amelia, please, let me explain. Let me fix my mistake," he prayed. Time passed relentlessly. 2 hours now. Samuel could barely feel his fingers from gripping the steering wheel so tightly. He passed by the same square 3 times, as if something could have changed since the last check. The giant Christmas tree in the center, which had earlier enchanted people with its lights, now looked like a white ghost covered in snow. She must be so scared and so cold. Why didn't I tell the truth sooner? The alleys behind the restaurants were next. Samuel knew her routine. He knew that's where she used to look for food. The snow now hit his knees as he rummaged behind dumpsters and cardboard boxes. The smell of trash and grease was suffocating, but he didn't care. Every empty box, every corner with no sign of her, increased his despair. Her 10-year-old girl can't survive long in this temperature. Not barefoot, not alone. The hours dragged on like an eternity of ice. 3 hours of searching now. Amelia's face wouldn't stop appearing in his mind. Not the smiling face from dinner, but how she must be now, pale, frightened, freezing. The guards were starting to exchange worried looks, though no one dared suggest calling off the search. She has to be somewhere. She has to be. It was then that the car radio crackled with a deep voice. "Mr. Morais, we need to call off the searches. The storm is worsening, and the men can no longer move through the deep snow." Samuel gripped the steering wheel so hard his numb fingers ached. "No, keep looking. She's only 10 years old, alone out there," he shouted, his voice breaking with emotion. The car's dashboard now read 5 degrees below zero, and the snow fell so densely that the headlights barely illuminated 2 meters ahead. Samuel kept driving slowly through the streets, which now resembled white tunnels more than anything. How could I do this to her? How could I think a lie would be better than the truth? "Amelia, my little Amelia, where are you?" he murmured, feeling the tears freeze on his face. At home, Juliana paced back and forth in the living room, occasionally stopping to look out the window, hoping to see Amelia's small silhouette emerging through the storm. The phone rang constantly. It was the guards following her husband, reporting more areas checked, more places where the girl wasn't. "God, please protect our little girl. We should have told the truth from the beginning. She trusted us, and we betrayed that trust." Juliana sobbed, clutching Amelia's coat she had left behind against her chest. The city, normally so familiar, had become a treacherous labyrinth of white and shadows. Samuel no longer knew how many times he had driven down the same streets, how many alleys he had searched. His voice was hoarse from shouting her name. "If anything happens to her, I'll never forgive myself. What kind of man am I who chose to build happiness on lies?" he thought, as the car slid dangerously on the accumulated snow. The radio crackled again, and Samuel looked at the device, his hands shaking on the wheel. The head of security's voice sounded again, almost pleading. "Mr. Maurice, it's impossible to continue. The men can barely move through the snow," he said, and Samuel closed his eyes for a moment, making a decision. "You can go. I'll keep searching on my own. I can't abandon her in this cold," he said. The car slid dangerously as he took the next turn, the speedometer barely registering 20 kilometers per hour in the storm. The temperature had dropped to 6 degrees below zero, and the snow was now so dense it formed an impenetrable white curtain. "I can't give up on her. I can't leave her alone like everyone else did. Amelia, please give me a sign, any sign," he murmured, his choked voice echoing in the empty car. The last of the security vehicles passed by him, their headlights casting ghostly reflections on the snow. Samuel was completely alone now, just like Amelia. The thought made his stomach churn. What right did I have to play with her heart? To pretend to be a father when I was nothing but a cowardly liar? He thought, as the car inched slowly through the city, transformed into a deadly white desert. The car's dashboard read 4 in the morning when the first hints of dawn began tinting the sky. Not that it made much difference in the relentless storm. Samuel could barely feel his fingers and toes, but he didn't dare turn on the car's heater. If she's freezing out there, what right do I have to warm myself? Amelia, my little Amelia, where are you? He whispered repeatedly, like a desperate prayer into the frigid night. Meanwhile, Amelia ran through the frozen night, her bare feet barely feeling the snow-covered ground. The pink dress Juliana had given her was soaked and heavy, clinging to her trembling body. The city lights looked blurred through her tears and the incessant snowfall. The blue rosary beads beat against her chest as she ran, a constant reminder of all she had lost. In her mind, her mother's voice echoed like a mantra of comfort. "Be strong, my warrior. You've always been stronger than me." The streets, once so familiar, now seemed a treacherous labyrinth under the storm. Amelia passed by the bakery where she used to wait for leftovers, the diner that sometimes kept food aside for her. Each place held a different memory, now tainted by the revelation of the letter. Why couldn't they just tell me the truth? Why did they have to pretend to love me? The biting wind whipped her face as she crossed yet another unfamiliar street. The intense cold had turned her fingers into small blocks of ice. Is my real father somewhere in this city too? Does he ever think of me? Does he regret abandoning us? The distant sound of sirens made Amelia change direction, entering a darker side street. Her feet left red marks on the snow, but she no longer felt pain, only a numbness that slowly rose up her legs. The temperature continued to drop, and her breath formed small clouds in the cold air. As she walked, she remembered dinner a few hours earlier. Samuel's smile, Juliana's affection. How can everything change so quickly? One minute I had a family, the next I'm alone again. Amelia passed by the restaurant where she had met Samuel and Juliana. The lights were off, but she could see the table where it all began through the snow-covered window. The smell of food still lingered in the air, making her stomach growl. Her knees trembled with exhaustion as she continued walking, trying to get away from the busier areas. Grandma Vivian was right. Nobody really wants me. I'm just an intruder in people's lives. The Christmas decorations in the stores now seemed to mock her. Luminous angels, bright stars, happy families of snowmen. Amelia tripped over an icy bump, falling to her knees in the deep snow. She got up with difficulty, her wobbly legs barely supporting her weight. Christmas should be a time of miracles, but it seems miracles don't happen for girls like me. A car slowly drove down the street, its headlights sweeping the darkness. Amelia hid behind a decorated tree, her heart racing. Could it be Samuel and Juliana searching for her? The colorful lights of the tree reflected on the snow around her, creating a surreal kaleidoscope of colors. Maybe I should go back. But how can I trust them again after so many lies? She wondered. The wind picked up in intensity, bringing a new wave of snow. Amelia could barely keep her eyes open against the storm. Her hair, carefully styled earlier by Juliana, was now covered in ice, weighing on her back like little frozen needles. She tried to orient herself, looking for some familiar landmark through the white curtain. If I can make it to the cathedral, at least there it's warm and safe. Amelia's legs trembled more and more as she advanced through the storm. Her soaked and frozen pink dress made it difficult to move, She passed by several awnings where she used to sleep, places that once seemed so bad, but now promised a tempting shelter against the deadly cold. Why did I run away? I should have stayed and demanded the truth. Now it's too late. A particularly strong gust of wind almost knocked Amelia over. She leaned against a post, trying to regain her balance. That's when she heard the sound, a powerful engine cutting through the night's silence. She turned quickly, her burning eyes straining to see through the snow. Two bright headlights appeared around the corner, illuminating the falling flakes like tiny diamonds. I need to get out of here. I need to hide. The main avenue loomed ahead, wide and intimidating under the storm. Amelia hesitated on the edge of the sidewalk, her body trembling uncontrollably. The sound of the engine was closer now, echoing between buildings like distant thunder. She began to cross, her numb feet barely feeling the ground beneath them. Just a few more steps, just a little further. The deafening roar of the car caught Amelia by surprise. She turned her head, her eyes widening to meet the blinding lights cutting through the darkness. The vehicle was skidding on the snow, a massive hunk of out-of-control metal coming straight at her. Her frozen muscles didn't respond to her brain's desperate commands. No, please, no. The impact was brutal and sudden. Amelia felt her body being hurled into the air like a leaf in the wind. For one surreal moment, she saw the entire city below her. The lights, the snow, the dark sky. Time seemed to slow down, each snowflake suspended in the air like tiny stars. She landed in the snow with a dull thud, her small body rolling several times before coming to a stop. The pink dress spread out around her like a frozen flower, and the blue rosary was still firmly clutched in her hand. The vehicle disappeared into the storm, leaving only the faint echo of its engine and deep tracks in the snow. Amelia tried to move, but each attempt sent waves of pain through her body. Daddy Samuel, help me. It hurts so much. Is this how Mommy felt when she went to heaven? She wondered, still dazed from the impact. The snow began falling harder, as if the very sky was trying to cover what had happened. Amelia could hear distant voices, sirens piercing the night, but everything seemed to come from far away. The city lights were starting to blur, dancing before her eyes like colorful fireflies. Juliana, I'm sorry I ran away. I just wanted it to be true so badly. The cold was different now, no longer sharp and painful, but a soft numbness that spread through her body like a heavy blanket. Amelia tried to keep her eyes open, fighting against the weariness that threatened to overcome her. Dark stains began forming in the snow around her, melting the immaculate whiteness. Someone, please, I don't want to be alone in the dark. Her thoughts began to blur, memories merging like colors in a wet watercolor painting. Her mother's smile, the dinner with Samuel and Juliana, the blue rosary on Christmas night, everything blended into a kaleidoscope of memories. Amelia clutched the rosary tighter, feeling the cold beads against her skin. Mom, you said you'd never leave me alone, that you'd always be with me. The sky above was starting to lighten slightly, the first signs of dawn trying to penetrate the storm. Amelia heard voices getting closer and closer, shouts calling her name. She wanted to respond, wanted to shout back, but her voice seemed stuck in her throat. The tears on her face were beginning to freeze, creating shiny trails on her pale cheeks. There's someone looking for me. There's someone who cares. The sound of footsteps in the snow grew stronger, more urgent. Amelia struggled to stay conscious, her honey-colored eyes blinking slowly against the falling snowflakes. The world around her seemed to be disappearing little by little, the edges of her vision gradually darkening. In her last moments of lucidity, she thought she heard Samuel's voice, desperate and close. Daddy, forgive me. I should have stayed. The last thing Amelia registered before completely losing consciousness was the warmth of gentle hands touching her face and agitated voices around her. The world slowly went dark, like a candle being snuffed out by the wind. In her semi-conscious mind, one final thought floated like a prayer. Maybe there's still someone who loves me. Samuel had given up on continuing to drive. The road had become too slippery in the snow, and so he decided to proceed on foot. After walking for a few blocks in the cold, he caught sight of a pink blotch through the curtain of snow, his heart nearly stopping when he recognized the dress Juliana had bought. His feet sank into the deep snow as he ran toward Amelia, each step seeming to last an eternity. The biting wind lashed his face, but he barely felt it, focused only on the small, motionless figure in front of him. "Please, God, please don't take her too. I can't lose another daughter," he pleaded. Samuel knelt in the snow beside Amelia, his hands trembling as he touched her icy face. She was so pale, so fragile, she looked like she was made of porcelain. With infinite care, he removed his coat and wrapped her small body in it, noting with horror that her bare feet were completely blue from the cold. "Amelia, my little one, forgive me. Forgive me for not being honest from the start," he whispered, his voice choked with fear. With Amelia in his arms, Samuel ran back to the car, shielding her from the biting wind with his own body. He knew it would be useless to call for an ambulance in that snow. Every step in the deep snow was a battle, but he barely felt the strain. His entire world had narrowed down to that small frozen body against his chest, the faint breathing he could feel through the coat. "Hold on, daughter. Please hold on." When he reached his car, the vehicle seemed to take an eternity to warm up, while Samuel cranked the heater up to maximum and positioned Amelia in the passenger seat with the utmost care, reclining the backrest. His hands were stained with pink snow, but he refused to think about what that meant. "It's going to be all right, Amelia. Daddy's here now. Daddy's going to take care of you." The streets were practically deserted, allowing Samuel to drive well above the speed limit, even with the snow hindering visibility and making driving difficult. Every red light was torture, every second stopped an eternity. He kept one hand on the wheel and the other on Amelia, monitoring her breathing, feeling her weak pulse. It was then that he began to speak, the words pouring out in an uncontrollable torrent. "Amelia, my little warrior, you need to fight. I know I disappointed you. I know I lied when I should have been honest from the start, but you need to understand. When I first saw you in that restaurant, trying to help Juliana during her seizure, I saw so much kindness in you. So much courage, a fortifying courage, but I didn't have time to thank you. And when you showed up at our door on Christmas Eve, it was like God was giving me a second chance, a chance to be a father, to have the family I always dreamed of." Samuel took a sharp turn, the car's tires skidding slightly on the snow, but he kept talking, his voice thick with emotion. "You know, Juliana and I tried so hard to have children. We lost 3 babies, Miguel, Sofia, and Gabriel. Each loss was like a stab to the heart. Each shattered dream left us emptier. And then you showed up with your honey-colored eyes so much like Naomi's, with your heart so big even after everything you'd been through." His hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as he swerved around a slower car. "I didn't lie when I said I'd been looking for you, Amelia. I did look, not with my feet or my eyes, but with my heart. Every child I saw on the street, every sad little face on the news about orphans. In each one of them I looked for you, for the daughter I knew existed somewhere. And when I finally found you, I was a coward. When you believed I was your biological father, your eyes were so hopeful, you were so desperate. I knew that if I told you I wasn't, you would break. I never meant to hurt you. Never. I just didn't want to hurt you. And I feel like I failed even more by lying, but the truth is you are my daughter. Not by blood, but you are the daughter of my dreams." Samuel braked sharply to avoid a stalled car in the snow, but didn't stop talking, his words now coming between tears. "You are the daughter I always wanted, Amelia. Not by blood, but by heart. Every smile of yours during dinner, every time you called me Dad, it was like a piece of my heart came back to life. Juliana, too. You can't imagine how she blossomed having you home. For the first time in years, I heard her humming while making up your room, making plans, dreaming of a future." Running his trembling hand over the girl's face, he continued, his voice now almost a plea. "When I found the Bible open and realized you had discovered the truth, I felt like the world was collapsing again. But this time it was different. It wasn't like losing a baby I never knew. It was losing you, Amelia, with all your strength, your sweetness, your way of folding the napkin like a little princess. It was losing the daughter I learned to love in such a short time." The hospital was already coming into view, its lights cutting through the darkness of the early morning. Samuel accelerated even more, ignoring the danger of the snow. "Please, daughter, fight. Fight like you fought your whole life. Fight like you fought against the cold on the streets, against the evil in the world, against every injustice you've suffered. I promise this time I'll do everything right. I'll be honest. I'll give you all the love you deserve. I'll be the father you've always dreamed of having." Tears now ran freely down Samuel's face as he maneuvered the car into the emergency entrance. "I don't care that you're not my biological daughter. I don't care that your real father was a coward who abandoned Naomi. What matters is that you are my daughter here." He touched his own chest. "In the same place where I keep Miguel, Sophia, and Gabriel. In the same place where I keep all the dreams I have for you." Stopping abruptly at the emergency room entrance, Samuel continued, "I want to see you grow up, Amelia. I want to take you to school. I want to teach you how to swim like your mom promised. I want to be there for every important moment in your life. I want to be the father who walks you down the aisle one day, who holds your children in his arms, who is by your side for every achievement and every challenge." As he got out of the car with the girl in his arms, doctors and nurses were already running toward him with a stretcher, but Samuel needed to finish. "Please, daughter, don't give up. Don't let me lose another person I love. You're not just another child who came into my life. You're the miracle I asked for every night. You're the answer to all the prayers I said asking for a complete family. You are my daughter, Amelia, not by blood, but by choice. And if you fight, if you stay with me, I promise you'll never feel alone or abandoned again." The doctors tried to take Amelia from Samuel's arms, but he kept holding her for one more moment, whispering into her ear, "And that room Juliana was decorating? It's just the beginning. I'll give you the whole world, daughter. I'll give you everything you deserve, all the love I've saved up over the years. I just need you to fight now, to be a warrior." Reluctantly, Samuel allowed the medical team to place Amelia on the stretcher, but he didn't let go of her small, cold hand. As they ran through the hospital corridors, he kept talking, as if his words could keep her tethered to life. "Remember when you folded the napkin like a little princess at dinner? That moment. That simple moment made me feel like the proudest father in the world. I want to feel that pride every day, Amelia." When they reached the doors of the emergency room, one of the doctors held Samuel by the shoulder, preventing him from going any further. The nurses pushed the double doors open, taking Amelia inside the emergency room. Samuel pressed his hands against the observation window glass, his last words coming out like a prayer. "Please, my little one, come back to me. You are the daughter I've always dreamed of, the missing piece in my life. No matter what happens, you'll always be my daughter. Always." Samuel watched helplessly as the medical team worked, his eyes fixed on Amelia's pale face. A gentle nurse guided him to the waiting room. "She's so small, so fragile, but also so strong, just like her mother. Naomi was like that too, delicate on the outside but with incredible inner strength. Amelia has that same strength. She has to have it," he thought. Samuel let himself drop into one of the waiting room chairs, his hands still trembling, stained with pink snow. His coat was in the car, wrapped around Amelia, and now he was shivering from the cold, but he hardly noticed. His eyes didn't leave the double doors where his daughter had disappeared. How could I let this happen? How didn't I realize she might run away in this deadly cold? The phone in his pocket vibrated. It was Juliana again. He answered with a choked voice, barely able to form the words. "I found her, love, but she's badly hurt. We're at the hospital." On the other end of the line, he heard his wife's muffled sob and her trembling voice. "I'm on my way there." "Our girl is strong, Samuel. She'll make it. She has to make it." The fluorescent hospital lights made his eyes burn, or maybe it was the tears he could no longer contain. A nurse approached with a form, asking questions that seemed to come from far away. Full name, age, blood type. How can I be her father if I don't even know her blood type? What kind of father am I? He asked himself, as he answered only what he knew. The clock on the wall seemed to move in slow motion. Each minute was an eternity of anguish, each second a torture of uncertainty. Samuel stood up, started pacing back and forth in the waiting room. A doctor came out through the double doors, and Samuel practically ran up to her. But she just walked past, going to attend another emergency. He sat back down, his shaky legs barely supporting him. Why doesn't anyone tell me anything? Why can't I be in there with her? She must be so scared. Juliana burst through the emergency room doors, her hair disheveled and her coat carelessly thrown over her pajamas. Her red, swollen eyes scanned the waiting room until they found Samuel, who was pacing back and forth like a caged animal. "Samuel, how is she? Have they said anything?" Her voice came out choked, almost unrecognizable with anguish. "Nothing yet. No one tells me anything. She was in an accident. I think it was when she was crossing the street, but the driver must have fled and